You're listening to Let's Talk Property on Radio Reverb, 97.2 FM and DAB. I'm Heather Hilder-Darling, and we're going to be talking more about property today. The programme is sponsored by Callaway's Estate Agents, and we're going to be tackling the changing face of estate agency. Let's think about what happens behind the scenes in a property business. Now, I don't know about you, but I really love property programmes. I am a real fan, and I'm so pleased that David Olusaga's programme, A House Through Time, has come back onto our screens. I'm absolutely hooked. I love other programmes as well. Unfortunately, I don't find the time to listen to them all or see them all, but if something comes on the radio and I hear the word property, I'm in there straight away, turning up the volume. Now, you may have heard me talk about my 22 property moves. That's quite some going, considering the stress that moving house is supposed to cause. In my case, I've moved countries, but didn't have so much baggage in those days, let's be honest. I've done some Googling for some factoids. Did you know that the number of estate agents and auctioneers in the UK from 2011 to 2020 has gone up to over 56,000? That's from source Statista. According to latest figures, the sector gave jobs to over 500,000 people and generated over 68.1 billion British pounds in turnover in 2020. Now, we all recognise that the world of work has changed since March 2020, and how has it affected estate agents in particular? Have we moved with the times, pivoted? Have we been working from home? Today I have a bit of a surprise because the tables have been turned. I asked my guest, Bernie Armstrong, to join me, and he said, Heather, I think what I'd like to do is interview you. Now, Bernie and I have been working together for the last 7 months, and the results are quite spectacular. So I am now going to introduce Bernie from BAM Social Media. Bernie, how are you? How do you feel being in the hot seat today?
Yeah, it's actually quite fun. I think it's going to be an enjoyable experience having the tables turned because we're very familiar with listening to you every week, enjoying your property program. But I think it's time for you to be in the hot seat. So actually, I don't think I am in the hot seat. I think it's you.
Oh dear, I hope I don't give away too many secrets.
Well, maybe not. I have to say, we watched a fantastic program about good old Michael Parkinson, and it was a beautiful documentary encapsulating his life and career, particularly in front of the camera. And it was really lovely to see the way he had interviewed many, many guests from different walks of life throughout the world over many, many years. And you can see the changes in his approach and how confident he became towards the sort of, I suppose, last 50% of his career, where he was asking incredibly bold questions and sometimes to the point where the guests would feel like getting up and walking out. Now, I'm hoping that you're not going to do that today, and I'm
not going to do a Piers Morgan, no. Am I?
No, absolutely. So I think it'll be interesting for those that listen to you regularly on this show. I think they would really love to know a bit more about you and, what gets you up in the morning? What is your why? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing the radio show? Why have you been in property for however many years you'd like to divulge?
Well, I'm a great fan of Simon Sinek. I love watching his videos. And actually, at the moment on my bedside table is his book, Leaders Eat Last. This is all about finding your purpose in life. And so many of us can drift from start to finish. I've been working since I was 15 years old. That's over 50 years. And obviously, I've seen a lot of changes in the world of work. And I'm sure we're going to touch on some of those areas a little bit later. I like to have a purpose. I like to have a purpose for getting up every morning. I like to feel I've achieved something by the end of the day. And I've been very, very fortunate to have had some super mentors, some ex-bosses, colleagues who've really opened the world of business to me. Originally, I was a bilingual secretary. I worked in France. I worked in Brussels and Italy. And when I came back and took a secretarial job when I returned from Brussels, I just thought, do I really want to be a secretary for the rest of my life? You know, we didn't have as many career options when I left after my A-levels, but I did go to Goldsmiths College in London to become a teacher of languages. And I don't know what it was. My parents moved us around an awful lot as children, and I was just fascinated by the properties that they bought for us. I was fascinated about, you know, tripping all over the new properties being built in Kilmarnock. There was a huge estate being built there. And I think that just gave me a big interest. I have worked in electronics company. I have worked in TV. I've worked in food companies. So I'd been exposed to a lot of different places. But for some reason, property has just sort of been that light bulb moment. I love this. I love seeing the developments. I love dealing with people. And of course, it helps that my husband, Bob, is also very much into property. And of course, it just sort of all fitted, really. So, you know, I just love everything about property. I can't get enough, as I say, TV, radio, magazines. It doesn't matter. Interiors, gardening. That's me all through and through.
Fantastic. And how would you say your personality and your skill sets from all of your career are helping you today in your property business?
Well, I suppose if we look at some of the studies that have been on people's personalities and skill sets, I've had a very, very wide experience in different cultures, from working in France, Italy and Belgium, the different cultures as well. I worked for a company that did a lot with Saudi Arabia. So, of course, there was quite a lot of culture there. And when you first start out in life, I don't believe you know exactly who you are, and it develops over time. So on the sort of color spectrum, I would say I am a blue. So I like fun. I like to, you know, engage with people. I'm also partly red. I have to be, as a business owner, I have to have the strengths of focus. Also, I have to have control of certain things within the business. But also on the other side, I love sport. I've always played a lot of sport from a very early age. Tennis, I wanted to be a top tennis player when I was 11. I now play golf. I've done a huge amount of sports like lacrosse and netball, hockey, rock climbing, canoeing. I've been introduced to so many. So that's the sort of me on the yellow spectrum. You know, I love being in a team. I love working together. I love solving problems. So,
no, that's great. And clearly there's a difference between being an estate agent and being in property, and also being a business owner. And of course, you're both. You're everything. How do you manage to make that work as a business owner?
It's quite difficult, and obviously we've just gone through the last 18 months have actually been quite difficult. You know, as a business owner, you are there to lead, you're there to motivate. Whilst you've still got your own issues at home, you've still got to make sure your family's secure. It's not easy. You still have to be there for your clients. But I think the fact is I've built up a resilience over the last 50 years that allows me to face challenges head on. You know, at the time when I was going through a lot of these ups and downs, as everybody gets in their life, you just get to the bottom and you think, how am I going to get out of this? And somehow my mother, with her northern upbringing, oh, for goodness sake, Heather, pull your socks up. You know, I mean, that was how it was. And of course, you do pull your socks up. And, you know, when you get to, you know, your mid 60s and you suddenly think, gosh, have I really done that? Even my kids sometimes go, Mum, I didn't realise you did that. Well, you've never asked. And, we've all had issues in our lives that we've had to overcome. And I think that puts you in good stead for when you do have, financial problems.
Sure.
You have issues with clients, issues with tenants, problems that's just come from you when the government suddenly throws something in like, right, tomorrow you've got to start thinking about working from home. And now you've got to do this. And it means a lot of changes. And I have experienced a lot of changes in my life. I actually quite embrace change. I know a lot of people don't like it. And I suppose as a working retiree, I just want to still feel that inspiration that comes to me every single day that I do something, from people that I meet, really interesting stories behind some of the people that I meet as well. And I think, wow, we've all got something to give, and we should really share those stories with others.
Absolutely.
Because I think that brings inspiration as well.
Definitely, yeah. And I'm hoping that we're going to have time for maybe one or two of your anecdotes or stories later on, because I'm sure your regular listeners are going to want to know a little bit more about, digging deep into the background and the life of Heather. And so obviously nobody knew the pandemic was going to be coming around the corner. It's lasted now a good amount of time, and we're almost 2 years in here as we record this interview today. So how has that whole era affected you personally? Because you're running a business, you've got a family. How have you managed to cope?
I think sometimes you just do some things instantaneously. I think if you give too much thought to it, you almost become like a rabbit in the headlights. You just sit there and you're going, oh, how am I going to get out of this? Well, and this is where your inner strength comes through. And because you've dealt with issues in the past, you've sort of got that resilience and those coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Now, we were already making changes to the business pre-March 2020. And it just seemed, I don't know whether it definitely wasn't luck, but because we'd already started making moves in certain directions, when we stood, I remember being stood in the boardroom and the staff were there, and we said, right, from today, you're working from home. And everybody looked at me and said, well, how can we possibly do that? And I said, well, we have a strategy. At the end of today, you all take your black boxes home with you, and we will do X, Y, Z to make sure everybody is safe. That was the top priority. But of course, it wasn't just the staff. It was our contractors who do so much important work.
Yes,
it was our tenants. It was our landlords. It was, everybody that we're involved with on a day-to-day basis. How could we keep them safe? Nobody had an inkling how long this would go on for. So in a sense, we had a long-term strategy, but we looked at it daily. What's changed overnight? What do we have to do now? And, it's that sort of thing that becomes just part of you. You just do it automatically. And I think, a lot of mothers who are at home, they're doing this day in, day out with their kids. One kid's got to be at ballet. The other one's got to be at football. The other one's got to be at, piano lessons. The other one's having a sleepover or a play date with somebody. And mums just cope. And I think really a lot of that of being a mum, a working mum, I've always worked. Even when I wasn't sort of at work, I was generally doing other stuff, like I used to take in students to add to the family coffers. I used to do translating for a company because I could do that at home when the children were at nursery or at school. And it just becomes, it's a way of life, really. It's something that I find interesting. As I said, I love inspiration from other things. I love learning. And that's really why initially I think I wanted to become a teacher, to be able to pass on that learning, that love of learning, really. And from there on, we have become a learning organisation. And a lot of people may not have heard of that term, but, if as an organisation you don't learn, you don't grow, you don't actually move into places where perhaps you wouldn't have done normally. So all of that is very much a thread throughout our businesses. And I love it. You know, when people really do get excited about something, it makes me feel excited as well, because I love those sort of the looks on the faces when somebody goes, oh, I get it now. So, you know, just getting to the teams themselves to think about what is the purpose in their lives when they get up and come to work. There's a great difference between being an employee and a business owner. And I think, you know, if a lot of people thought why they're going to work, it might make them make decisions that perhaps they hadn't thought of before.
Indeed. And of course, it's not just the employees that you've had to bear in mind here, it's your clients as well. And how have the clients that you're dealing with, the tenants, the vendors of properties, how have their expectations changed during this pandemic era where we've had to get used to working from home, working virtually, working remotely, and viewing houses? I mean, how have you managed to cope with that? How have your clients' expectations changed?
They have all been incredibly supportive, I have to say. It's that great British character, isn't it? You know, where we all stick together, and in times of crisis, let's deal with this together. I mean, obviously, as agents, we had to make sure that all our COVID strategies were in place. So just sending out email communication to our landlords, picking up the phone, explaining that things were changing, that we couldn't potentially do midterm inspections, property inspections and things like that, that possibly contractors couldn't turn up for work because they either had somebody who perhaps had the virus, or we really had to keep everybody safe. But I'm really proud of how all our clients and our tenants reacted to all of this, and they neither knew how long it was going to go on for. But I think because we took control and put things in place, it showed that we had real concern for everybody within our circle, if you like. And so creating that circle of safety for everybody was really important. And of course, you know, that carries on even now today. I know we're supposed to have got to Freedom Day, but still we're not taking any chances. We still ask certain questions when people come to the door for everybody's benefit.
And how have your team been affected by things? Because one thing, obviously your clients, but what about the team, the people that you're working with on a daily basis? How have they been able to adjust, and have they been able to be flexible in the way that you had hoped?
Well, there's been a few differences, actually. You know, obviously we've all got different personalities. Bob and I, you know, we've got this big headquarters in Worthing, and Bob and I were the only, Bob's my husband, and we were the only two in these premises. And it was quite funny. I'm glad I was a secretary in previous lives, because of course I was printing off letters and sticking stamps on them, you know, those sticky things, the sticky rectangular things, because we had to do, all our staff were working from home. And some of them found it very difficult because they like the social atmosphere at work. Some of them were very, very concerned about catching the virus, although we brought in all the PPE and everything, and our offices were cleaned absolutely thoroughly. But equally, those that were working from home didn't necessarily have like a home study, so they were balancing a computer on the kitchen table, and it made it quite difficult. So what we put in place was we had a huddle. Every single week we just called it a huddle. So we all got together on the computers, and we actually didn't talk about work at all. In fact, I said, we are not to talk about work. This is literally, you know, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And every week, you know, you could see the ups and downs of people who were missing the social part of coming to work, seeing people. There were those who just wanted to be in the office. They didn't want to be at home. They had this literally life, work, home balance, and it wasn't compatible with how they were as characters. So myself and my branch manager, James Duffy, did an awful lot of phoning people, making sure they were okay, video groups, etc. And it worked really well, actually.
when somebody, a homeowner, is actually thinking about putting their lovely home on the market, maybe they need to do a move for a number of different reasons. I wonder whether the kind of the reputation, if you will, of estate agents generally sometimes makes people forget that estate agents are real people. And of course, there are good and bad and all the rest of it, and different experiences that we've all had when dealing with moving house and dealing with estate agents. But you're real people, aren't you? You know your team, and you have feelings, you have emotions, and sometimes it can be difficult being on your side of the desk. How do you manage to cope with that sort of day-to-day involvement with the public outside that may have a very different view of estate agents?
Well, it's, when I said to you at the beginning, I've sort of found who I am over many, many years. And what I really enjoy doing is engaging with people. I love speaking to people and finding out their stories. So I'm very much connected, if you like, and being a Piscean as well, connected with the emotional side of moving and when somebody's moved. And I'm speaking to two clients in particular at the moment, one who's moving and one who has just sold. And, I see how difficult it's been. So you just have to gently nurture them through the process, because everybody says it is stressful. And I think the stress actually of moving is not necessarily down to the paperwork. Sometimes it's all down to, where am I going to end up? Will I like the new neighbours? Will they like me? Will I fit in? I've been through all that 22 times. So I just know that sometimes you have to reach out to others and, make sure that you're not on your own. And that's what really interests me, the psychology of it all. A lot of people will perhaps say, oh, I want to move. And then when you dig a bit deeper, well, why do you want to move? And that's the bit that I like asking, because sometimes they just say, oh, I want to move, but they haven't thought of the reason or the whys and the wherefores, really. And I think you've got to do that so that you don't end up making the wrong move for a start.
I think that's great. And people do make a decision as to where they're going to place their property in terms of an estate agent or a letting agent, if they're going to be renting it out. Very much, I think, built on trust and also likability. And I've known you for some time now, and I have to say you come across very well, I think, as a people person. You do genuinely have an interest in the welfare of the people that you're dealing with. And I think that comes across very loud and clear. And we'd, of course, welcome any feedback and comments after the show from our listeners today. But, that's really, really important in terms of making that vital decision as to who do you choose and how do you actually select the agent that you want to trust your property with and your moving experience. Because it's not all about the money. Of course, that's a big part of it. How much am I going to get for my property? But it's also very much the experience. And the experience can really range from good to bad, depending on the level of customer service that you get. Now, one of the other things, of course, is in this whole era is that things have changed beyond description, really, over the years that you've been in this business. And the whole world has gone digital, and information technology and social media, of course, has all come in during our careers. Now, let's talk digital for a moment. What measures, if any, have you put in place to improve your business and the workflow and the ability to be able to serve your customers?
Well, do you know what, Bernie? The changes have come about really, really quickly. I joined my first estate agency when I got back from Brussels in 1983. And of course, we were still using typewriters. We still had a plastic red box on the desk with your hot leads.
Yep. I remember that.
I'm not even sure if email had been invented actually at that point. So, when things started changing, and I think the whole point about estate agency is really, it's a people business. Okay, you could say the byproduct is property, but it's still a people business. And if you can't communicate, then I think you're at a loss. And of course, a lot of people forget that communicating is not only face to face, it's now email rather than letter, perhaps. But when I first did my training at university in marketing, it was like a light bulb moment for me as well. I just thought, it's got a name for it, all this talking to people and communicating with people, which of course I've done my whole lifetime. So I really enjoyed learning about marketing and marketing strategy. So when all this new digital stuff started coming in, of course, it was like, wow, this is fantastic. We'll be able to do things quicker. We can still keep in touch with people. But of course, you have to think about the USP of the business. And our USP really is our people visible in an office on the end of a phone if you want to communicate with us. After lockdown, please come and see us in the office if you want to sit opposite us and chat. And, we have thought about this sort of hybrid agency where you've partly got it's all digital. I think for some people, that's a little bit too far removed. It's a generational thing. A lot of perhaps people who are used to the conventional branches with people in there and they knew their agent, rather than this anonymous behind the scenes digital stuff. Although obviously we've got computer software as well that helps us. We've got databases, but databases are only as good as, the information provided. There are some parts of perhaps an email campaign that don't necessarily fit with your client. You've got to be able to chop and change and know when the right time is to perhaps pick up the phone or send them a text message. What I'm amazed about is how many people of my generation are now, oh no, don't message me on Facebook. Can you send me a WhatsApp or can you do something else? And I think that's amazing. It just shows that a lot of other people are engaging with the digital age. I think, websites are great for getting initial leads, but again, you have to nurture the leads like you used to do in the olden days. We're just using different platforms to what we've already done in the past, and that is progress. But I would hate to see progress go to where you never met your clients because it's all done digitally. It's all very well interviewing people in a Zoom call or over Google meetings or FaceTime. It's still not the same as sitting with somebody and talking. And I actually found that quite difficult when we came out of lockdown. The thought of going out, and I'd sort of lost a bit of my sociability, and it seemed odd because you're not surrounded with people. Indeed. That had disappeared, and I think gradually we're getting that back. So that's really positive.
No, that's really important. So the other thing, of course, with the digital age is as well, when there's such a competitive market, and certainly the Brighton area, I think probably has more estate agents per square foot than a lot of other places that I could think of. And so for somebody that's listening today or to any of your regular property shows, when they come to select an estate agent or a letting agent they want to place their property with, it's very difficult for them to know who to go to when there are so many different names in the main streets. Now, of course, the ability to be able to go and have a cup of coffee over a desk in an office isn't the only way to reach people these days. And of course, social media has kind of reversed everything. And so I think one of the things that we love in our relationship with you, Callaway's estate agents, is that from a BAM social video point of view, what we love to bring to the party here is to help the clients that you want to speak to actually reach you, because we know that you've got such a huge amount of value and a wealth of experience from all of these years of being in the property business, you and Bob, that actually joining you up with clients that don't actually know that you exist necessarily, or maybe wouldn't just happen to be passing your shop window, we're connecting the dots with social media because most people these days, of course, travel with a mobile phone. It's probably spending more time in their hand than a desktop. Obviously, at home would have hours of them viewing, and you've got, I don't know, some people working in front of a computer all day, but other people are on their phone a lot, and they're looking for the right agent to place their property with. So social media can actually form a very useful link and bridge that gap and bring the right people together. Because when you've got such a fantastic service, you want to shout from the rooftops and say, hey guys, over here, me, Heather, and you've got something of great value. And I've seen that firsthand. And I just think it's wonderful that we can actually help to bridge that gap. We were talking the other day, and you were saying that actually this has created a bit of a problem. Would you like to elaborate on this a little bit? What kind of problem were we talking about here?
Yes, we were. Yes, I think I've been, in the social media world for probably over 12 years now, because, of course, when I saw where marketing was going and my interest in it, obviously you start with the Facebook and then you do the Twitter and you do the LinkedIn and Pinterest and TikTok. Not sure about TikTok yet, but apparently, perhaps for the new generation coming through. Yep. But you're quite right, getting out towards your target market. And of course, we've all got different target markets. They all want different kinds of hooks for you to get them in to listen to what you can actually do for them. So we have, obviously been working with you for well over 6 months now. And, we've agreed on what we want to put out about the company. We've been trialing it, testing it on Facebook and Instagram. And in fact, the results have been astounding, absolutely astounding. I did start with Facebook advertising for property probably 4 to 5 years ago, but equally your target markets have to catch up with all that as well. So I think now lockdown has certainly had a huge impression on lots of people, and the social media side is just gathering a pace, and the billions of posts that are done every single day is just incredible. So, of course, we've ended up with so many leads that are quite difficult to follow up because, whilst you've got to follow them up and keep in touch, because what you don't want to do is for the leads to come into your inbox, if you like, and for them just to sit there and nothing happen with them. If people have genuinely requested information from you because you've just sort of ticked a box about something that they're curious about, maybe they just want you to whet their appetite slightly. They may go away again. It doesn't matter. But it's that I get a lot of inquiries going, I'm just curious, but something has piqued your curiosity to make you want to ask that question. And actually, I think that's where over the years, because things have piqued my interest and I've gone and found out more about them, I am a very, very inquisitive sort of person. So I need to know. Everything is on a need to know basis. And with other people contacting us, how does it work? What happens next? They are very, very valid questions. How long is it going to take for probate? How long is my conveyancing going to take? How much am I going to sell my property for? What's the market doing at the moment? And of course, a lot of stuff that comes out from, land registry is in arrears. So what happened 3 months ago is not necessarily what's happening today. So therefore, you need somebody on the ground who knows what's happening. 3 months is a long, long time in property. Yes. So, I see all this social media and the lead nurture as part and parcel of what is necessary to keep the business healthy, to keep that communication with. They don't all become clients, of course they don't. But if we've helped somebody in some tiny way to go, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Oh, my goodness, what am I going to do in that scenario? And if we can point people in the right direction, I feel that's a good job done. It doesn't matter that they don't become clients. It's that, wanting to genuinely help people, to point them in the right direction. And for me, that's pleasure in itself. Yeah.
And by providing that quality of service, the business will follow, because people will come back when they're ready, knowing that you are a safe pair of hands and they want to place their property with you. And I know, so you've been reaching out, we've been working together on Facebook and Instagram to find the right target clients, people that genuinely have an interest in what you're doing and the services that you provide. What other property technology are you able to use to really deliver that great customer service?
Well, do you know what? Since 1983, as I was telling you, when I worked in agency, when I used to go out with the senior negotiator with a tape measure to measure rooms. My goodness, that seems such a long time ago. Obviously, a lot of us now use laser guns, but a lot of us are now using subcontractors to go out to do the floor plans, to do videos of the property. I mean, obviously, during lockdown, we couldn't take tenants or purchasers to properties. Sure. So having a video of the property for them to walk through, plus a floor plan, plus, audio, so they could listen where we were going next. That's all been incredibly important. And in fact, we've continued with it now. It's been such a great tool.
And do you think people actually expect that kind of service now?
I think they should expect it personally, because it all helps, and we're all time poor, aren't we? So anything that can help you make a decision quicker, then I think that aids the process of buying or renting, whatever. Not only that, of course, the referencing tenants, for example, used to do that in the olden days. Now, of course, you send off all the documents to a third party. It comes back in virtually no time at all. That's wonderful, because then you can do whatever you need to do to try and get that tenant in that property by finding other solutions if they've failed on one particular issue. Far more efficient. And I think this is what gets you sometimes. I mean, there are a lot of complaints about how long conveyancing is taking at the moment. But, there've been a huge amount of sales, perhaps solicitors, conveyances just couldn't keep a pace with it. So with all the technology in the world, they've still got to do their checks. They've still got to read through the documents that come back to make sure everything ticks the right boxes. We have to do an awful lot, particularly on the letting side. That is very, very time consuming. And, we have to check now it's not the right to rent anymore. It's the settled status. So that's a different system that we've had to learn and get up to speed with. We have a lot of overseas students as well. So, of course, there's a lot of checking in that. Technology has got its place. But still, as a human being dealing with human beings, you still have to double check that everything ticks the right boxes.
No, that's absolutely right. So it's actually great that you've combined your vast experience, and particularly all the people that work in your office, all that experience combined with social media marketing to reach people that that you can help, and all of the video technology that you have to actually film properties, to actually show people virtual impressions and viewings, and help them get their due diligence and research done in record time. Really, the service level expectancy has gone up, but you've measured up as well as that expectation has increased. And as we come, out of lockdown, that's almost like the new benchmark. That's just what people expect these days. But on top of that, and those are all great things, by the way, that are giving you a very healthy business in a market that is fiercely competitive, and yet you are growing. You're getting more leads than you can actually cope with. You're looking to hire additional people because your business is growing and you need more hands on deck. Well, not everybody can say that, and I think that's a real testimony to the effort that you guys are putting in as a team over all of these years. The fact that you are still growing in unprecedented times, I think that's a fantastic tick in the box for me personally. But what other skills do you need, do you think, in this business particularly, to make you trustworthy? What is it that you believe your clients are looking for?
Well, as we know, estate agents don't have a particularly good reputation, and I'm that really makes me sad, because you said earlier we are real people. We are real people, and most of us want to do a proper job, but I think it comes down to basic human skills. We have to show fairness and demonstrate fairness in what we do. We really have to have very strong ethics about what we do. But we also have to be confident, because why would you go to somebody who didn't appear confident, didn't have the experience doing what they're doing? And actually, you just have to be honest in business. One of the great things I learned from my husband, obviously he used to be an estate agent, and now he's a land agent. This honesty when things go wrong. Nobody likes delivering bad news, but for goodness sake, be honest about it. I'm really sorry, Mr. Client. I'm really sorry, Mr. Landlord. Something's gone wrong here. They will appreciate that. They may be angry to start with, but the honesty is the best policy, and that is true in so many scenarios. I think as well, when you are trusted as a business owner and as a leader, your team feeds off of that. Your creativity. I know when I'm amongst, my team, we're thinking about things, we're brainstorming, we're getting excited. Oh, actually, I can hear my voice now. I'm getting so excited talking about this. You do it. Productivity.
It's infectious, though. We love it.
It is infectious. You can't help yourself, can you? And I sort of thought by the time I got to retirement age, I would have forgotten all this. But actually, there's more and more things opening up every single day that you just think, wow, I want to be involved with that. And obviously, just sharing the vision of what you want to be, how you want to get there, who's going to do what. That really does increase the feeling of team, and we're all behind the same goal. Let's do it little by little by little. And I think that's what works best, actually. Trustworthy, you have to be trustworthy with everybody around you, and we've really, really worked hard on that over the past 13 years that we've obviously been running Callaway's, and the last 30 years that we've been running our land and new homes business, because people remember. When things go wrong, they remember the worst things rather than the good things. And so, your reputation is at stake. My reputation is at stake. If things go wrong, I could go to prison. I could be heavenly fined. There are lots of things that I am staking my own family life for in running my business.
Yeah. So you have to really be passionate about why you're doing this, what service you want to provide for everyone, and and keeping the balance right always. So you're a business leader. You've already quoted, thought speakers of our day like Simon Sinek, who comes out with fantastic quotes that are really mind-bending sometimes, and I love listening to him. But what must leaders do, in your opinion, in business to be successful today?
Well, business has changed so much. And when I first joined the ranks of being an employee at the ripe old age of, 19 probably.
Just a few years ago.
There weren't the role models as I see them today. I think a lot of people kept their light hidden under a bushel. Maybe they were so busy in the business of business, they just didn't have the same sort of connection with their employees. Although I do remember I used to work at ITT Europe in the Avenue Louise in Brussels, and I was on the top floor. That was a very prestigious place with the president, Mr. Deneen, and he has a very huge reputation, and his secretary, Maria. And I tell you what, the things I learnt from Maria as a PA to a president of ITT was enormous. But again, I think because I'm a bit of a sponge, I wasn't sat in a room and taught about it. I watch people. I see how they interact. I think that's a nice touch, or I like the way they did that. And of course, over the years, I have participated in lots and lots of seminars, webinars, again, self-improvement. How can I do that better? How can I do it more efficiently? And I suppose really that's my maxim in life, be the best you can be. And that sounds very cliched sometimes, and you don't always know what your best is, and you will never reach your best, because every time you get to what you think is the best, there's another little nugget comes to you and you think, oh, I could do that as well. But I think to be successful, education in the best of terms, not necessarily anymore sitting somebody in a desk, but actually that flow of ideas. I used to love debating society when I was at school, having a topic that we all used to debate about, and you get completely conflicting ideas. But my goodness, what fun that used to be. And then you'd all have to go away having disagreed for a whole hour and all be friends again. That was hilarious. I think they have to, you have to share your vision so people know where you want to go to, what it is you're striving for, because otherwise, how are they going to join you on that journey? And what does it mean for them? Where are they going to end up? What participation can they take? Definitely, you need to lead by example. I work really hard. I really do. I generally, before breakfast even, I've usually done a couple of hours just catching up on the news, catching up with what's the legislation now, what's changed, what hasn't. And then even in the evenings, I'm generally either watching David Olusoga or watching the property programs or reading some of our trade magazines. But I love doing that. You see, that's all gaining more interest. I think
but you do that for fun anyway, because
I do it for fun. Yes.
So clear,
yes.
So clear to hear, for anybody that's listening in, you've just got such a genuine love for helping people in the whole business of property. And, you do your research, you check what's happening, you're always current, you're up to speed on the latest government initiatives and, what changes there might be in terms of regulations. There's so much involved in running your business. But I think, you summed it up very aptly just now when you said, your goal is to be the best that you can be in your business. And really all of those things that you're doing on a daily basis, which you perhaps take for granted, or, you just do them naturally because you're so used to doing these. And these are great habits that you formed, but you've formed those habits many years ago. So to you, it's second nature, but actually we're all getting the benefit of your vast experience, which I think is fantastic. Now, conversely, though, on the other side of running a business, what are the things that could cause instability or uncertainty? Because trying to keep that balance must be quite challenging.
It is very challenging. And obviously you need to plan. But I think the sort of things, there's the sort of the internal aspects of it and there's the external aspects. So, for example, if somebody suddenly leaves or you've got to make a decision about redundancies, which we've had to do in the past, to be honest, those are incredibly difficult because you're dealing with human lives. And, well, it creates a lot of uncertainty within the ranks of the people who are still there. So, of course, you've really got to make sure that people understand the reasons behind the decisions. I think if there's no direction and no shared vision, people are thinking, well, what track are we on now? If you keep changing without, making sure that everybody's on the same track, that can cause incredible uncertainty. And, similar things like, perhaps you've got to review job descriptions or working hours, or do we bring everybody back to the office now and start working from the office rather than working from home? All those are just changes that have to be dealt with, and they have to be dealt with in a way that people understand the reasons behind it. So again, making fair decisions is really, really important. Externally, the political and economic instability, for example, that we've had over the last 18 months. What about all the social changes that are going on at the moment? The social changes in terms of, can we work from home part of the week? Can we not? Are we going to work from, a bigger property? There's just so much social change, let alone the technical changes that are going on with people working more on broadband, expecting answers within literally the bat of an eyelid sometimes. And obviously all the legislative and compliance changes that have even been brought about during the last 18 months when we were all dealing with lots of other issues. You know, we've all had to deal with that, but you can't flap about it. You've just got to sit down. And I have to do a shout out for James here, James Duffy, our branch manager. We call him the compliance guru for a very good reason. You know, he knows so much about HHSRS, you know, and then the changes that the government made with evictions. And it was such a lot to deal with. And we had to get those notifications out to our landlords, out to our tenants. And I think that's where that creates instability and uncertainty, because you don't know how other people are going to react. And all you can do is keep calm and carry on and give the facts. And that's what we did. And then tried to work around anything else that came about that wasn't working.
And particularly in the case of landlords, there is so much legislation and changes that if they don't know what they're doing at any given moment, they could have a penalty or a fine levied against them, which is particularly concerning if they've got a number of properties in their portfolio.
Absolutely.
Now, you manage portfolios for many landlords, I know, but that's one of the areas of value that you bring, isn't it? Because you have got this ability to stay on top of what's happening and then communicate that quickly and effectively to your landlord community.
Correct.
No, that's great. Now, we've got time for one of your many, I'm sure, heartwarming stories. And I'm sure that we mentioned this right at the beginning of the interview, but I think it's now time where we get one of your wonderful stories that, if you imagine you were sitting in front of a fireplace late at night and you've got a glass of white wine and you're just chatting to somebody listening and they just want to know one of your lovely stories. Go on, give us a heartwarming story. We haven't got the music to go in the background to.
No, we haven't, have we? Violins and.
we can imagine that bit.
Oh, I've got so many to tell. It's really difficult to pick one out, but I think you may have guessed that I'm really, really keen on education and helping people and, you know, doing the best to support. And a few years ago, one of our clients, actually, he approached us and he said, Heather, I've got a son. I'm not quite sure what he wants to do in life. He definitely doesn't want to do what I'm doing. And he was a planner. And I said, well, I tell you what we'll do. Let's bring him into the business and he can work in every single department here at Land and Brand New Homes. And we'll move him around and we'll see what he loves doing. And of course, he arrived here and he was due to stay, I think it was just 6 months. In the end, he stayed a year because he loved it so much. And he was very good in all departments. And he used to come along with me, obviously, for the beach huts and any valuations that I went on. He went out with Bob around the countryside looking at sites. Anyway, at the end of his year, I sat him down and we said, okay, Harry, how have you felt about it? I've loved it. He said, I've loved it. I said, so have you made a decision? Yes, I'm going to be a planner. And I said, you're kidding me. What, like your dad? And he said, yes, I just love that side of it. So, of course, now he's gone on to university and we've introduced him to another one of our clients where he's working and doing very, very well. So to me, that is part and parcel of helping somebody to get onto the ladder of what he wants to do, although he was completely opposed to it. But another story, I suppose, you know, when you get to know people, that's what I love about meeting face to face. You hear about the friendships that people have made and why they're worried about moving away. And, you know, there's just so many to tell, actually, Bernie. I could spend hours just telling you the heartwarming stories.
No, we're going to have another session, I think, to cover some of these very important, lovely sort of, you know, war stories.
Yeah.
That would be great. So in closing, just in terms of the business, the property market, the property industry, what would you say are the three most obvious concerns at the moment? Because we've come out of the stamp duty, land tax benefits, where all of that was completely changed for a period of time. It stimulated a lot of growth in the property market. And I mean, honestly, it's just been frantic. Talk to any estate agent and they will say they've been, they were run ragged at the beginning of that government initiative. But now we sort of, we've come through that period and we're into yet new uncharted waters, I guess. What are the three current things that people should bear in mind, and how can we improve the property industry for business owners?
Well, I think if I was hauled into an office with the housing minister, there'd be three topics that I would want to speak about. And I know there are moves with ROPA, the Register of Property Agents, still on the cards, but I don't think we've got a date yet. We didn't at the last time, which means more training. I have got certainly mentorships. I think mentorships can be hugely inspiring, provided you've got the mentor and the mentee really do click, if you like. It's not just throwing you in with somebody and going, right, teach them how to, or you need to show people, you need to, really guide them and nurture them. So I would say mentorships within the property industry are my number one. Number two, definitely training and sponsorships. Now, this is partly being answered by the ROPA regulations, again, which I've just said we're still waiting to hear the dates. But sponsorships, there are apprentice schemes, but sometimes apprentices say, I really want to know about property. But actually, once they join and they realise they're quite long hours, it's stressful, it's emotional, for all the reasons we've spoken about during the previous part of this show, it's not for everybody. You really have to have, whatever you do in life, you have to have a passion for it, or else you are just doing a job. That's for some people, but not for everybody. And also, I think, they're all equally important, but my third one would be how to develop leadership qualities. For anybody who hasn't already been introduced to Simon Sinek, as I said, Leaders Eat Last is a fabulous book, and it actually shows how generations have changed since after the war about being supportive, being selfless, turning into selfish individuals. And we've got to have less of the selfishness and return to the selfless, all the thinking about the oxytocins and serotonins, which are really important if you are going to be selfless. So those are my three things that I would definitely talk about and want answers on if I was called into the Minister of Housing. Okay,
no, that's fantastic. It's always really useful to get some insightful views from someone who's clearly a property professional and in the know. And the property market, as we all know, as consumers, is just changing on a daily basis. And so when you are actually ready to dip your toe in the market and put your property up for sale or up for rent or whatever, it's so important to know the climate at the time, because even when you're sort of planning 6 months ahead, and thinking, maybe we'll move after Christmas or whatever it might be, things change so quickly. And it's really important that you can come to someone like yourself, Heather, that I would consider to be absolutely a top trusted advisor in the field, to know that I'm actually doing the right thing at the right time for my property and for my family. So I think, that's terrific. Now, the listeners today probably itching to know, how do they get in touch with you? What is the best website, let's say, for them to reach out to you after the show, or as and when they have an interest in getting involved in the property market?
Well, of course, we have a website, callawayesestateagents.co.uk. There is a contact form in there. You can fill that in and just send it off. I'm plastered all over social media. You can find me on Facebook. I'm on there as an individual. I'm on there as Callaway's Estate Agents. You can find me on Twitter, Real Estate Het. That's HET, Real Estate Het. I'm also obviously on Instagram with I Love Beach Huts and Callaway's Sussex. So I think if you can't find me, you haven't really dug deep enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep on looking and you will find.
Yes, absolutely.
There you go. Well, it's been an absolute delight talking to you again today, and I hope the listeners have gained some insightful background into the world according to Heather Hilder-Darling. Because if you tune in regularly to this show, it's one thing hearing you interview the guests, but we've all been fascinated over the years as to what makes you tick. And I think today we've actually been able to glean a really lovely side to you that perhaps we didn't know so well. And I hope that is going to encourage many of our listeners to come into your office at some point, or, to want to reach out to you when the circumstances allow in their own, situation in life. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. And of course, it may be that you'll be seeing a Facebook ad or an Instagram at some point. And just in closing, if anybody wanted to reach out to BAM Social Video, of course, there's a website, and Heather would be able to redirect you there. But if not, it's bamsocialvideo.com. This is Bernie Armstrong, and it's been a pleasure, Heather. Thanks very much for being on the show today in the hot seat.
This is Heather Hilder-Darling now, saying thank you for joining me, and my guest, Bernie Armstrong of BAM Social Video on Let's Talk Property.